Their mother was hit and killed by a car. Babies are now safe at a wildlife center.
Oh, at least they're okay. Yeah, next the bad. A hot air balloon crash lands in San Diego with 15 people on board. Unclear why the balloon went down, but you can see it there. Nobody seriously hurt, thankfully. Yeah.
And finally, the ugly. Baboons make a run for it, escaping from a research facility in Texas. All four animals captured a short time later. It's still unclear how they got out.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're like, I want my freedom.
I tell you what, I've been around those guys in Africa. They are not to be trifled with. I wouldn't want to have to capture a wild baboon running around a city. Yeah.
Yikes.
Don't mess around with the baboons.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Happy Monday. Fox and Friends starts right now.
Is Donald Trump unfit to be president?
Yes.
James Comey described President Trump as an ego-driven liar who treats women like meat and is, quote, morally unfit to be president.
Our president must embody respect and adhere to the values that are at the core of this country. This president is not able to do that. He is morally unfit to be president.
Nikki Haley says Russia will continue to feel the sting of sanctions.
Sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday.
We all think that Kevin is the right person.
Say we all. Are you speaking?
We are our leadership team, I'm saying. I'm not saying every single person.
Scalise, it's your understanding that he believes that.
Yeah.
House Speaker Paul Ryan announcing this week he will not seek re-election. The Wisconsin Republican now backing Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy as his successor.
This year I'm following some guys who have done such a great job as host. I guess they finally figured out that it only takes one woman to do the job of two men.
Were you watching the American Country Music Awards last night? That is Carrie Underwood coming back after her big accident the first time we saw her, and she killed it.
She always looks great, doesn't she?
She was fantastic.
She broke her wrist, right?
And a scar on her face as well.
50 stitches in her face, too.
Yeah. So you had a choice last night. Did you want to watch the American Country Music Awards, which were not political? Funny. It also started with a tribute to the people who lost their lives in Las Vegas. Or did you want something that was pretty political, where the former FBI director took a lot of shots at the current president of the United States as he tries to sell his book, Higher Loyalty?
Right, but I'll tell you what, you had to make a choice, because if you're watching us right now, you know that it was done at 11 p.m. Eastern time, and you had to be up pretty early. So we had a chance to do, we usually do, have to do with the debates. We wait for the debates to be over, and 3 hours later we're on television. Last night we all watched the 1 hour of a 5-hour interview, really, with James Comey. This is the best of. I didn't see a lot of big surprises outside his assessment, because I had a chance to read the book too this weekend, outside his assessment of what he thinks of President Trump's worthiness to be president.
I think what I gathered from watching the interview last night was I didn't really learn anything new, other than the fact that his wife and his daughters, 4 daughters, went out to march, the Women's March, after the election, and they really were disappointed that Hillary Clinton didn't win. So the family loves Hillary Clinton. He said he did not vote.
Well, listen, I said it was a rehash of the leaks that we got leading up to this, and also we did see the book over the weekend. But nonetheless, some of the highlights from last night that you'll be seeing a lot of today. Here is James Comey talking about, among other things, how the current president of the United States really shouldn't have that job. Just an unfit guy, he says.
Is Donald Trump unfit to be president?
Yes, but not in the way I often hear people talk about it. I don't buy the stuff about him being mentally incompetent or early stages of dementia. He strikes me as a person of above average intelligence who's tracking conversations and knows what's going on. I don't think he's medically unfit to be president. I think he's morally unfit to be president. The person who sees moral equivalence in Charlottesville, who talks about and treats women like they're pieces of meat, who lies,
constantly about matters big and small and insists the American people believe it, that person's not fit to be president of the United States on moral grounds. Our president must embody respect and adhere to the values that are at the core of this country, the most important being truth. This president is not able to do that. He is morally unfit to be president. This president does not reflect the values of this country.
Right, but he went on to say that he doesn't think the president should be impeached. No. Essentially, and I'll paraphrase, because the American people have to understand what they did in electing him, and they have to be punished for electing him. That's what I got from that. Yeah, you voted him, he became president, so now you have to deal with him. Getting impeached would be an easy way out for the American people.
So he's blaming the people.
But blaming the people that put him in office.
Donald Trump, you put this morally unfit man in office.
And then he talked about how George was asking why he opened this investigation into Hillary Clinton just a few days before the election, and he basically said, I looked at the polls and Hillary Clinton was getting 50%, Donald Trump was getting 38%. I didn't think there was any chance that Hillary was not going to win. He didn't think it would affect the election. Why does that even matter? And then afterwards, he was shocked that that affected the election.
Keep in mind, Lady Justice, you know, the scales and all that stuff, you're not supposed to look at anything. He looked at polls. Was he ever political? It looks like he was, but he says he was not.
If you knew that letter would elect Donald Trump, you'd still send it?
I would. Down that path lies the death of the FBI as an independent force in American life. If I ever start considering whose political fortunes will be affected by a decision, we're done. We're just another player in the tribal battle.
Listen, I think a lot of people, and I don't know why Comey didn't point this out, the reason why on October 27th he had to make a decision on whether to announce to everybody about the emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop is all about Hillary Clinton's decision to hire Uma Abedin, who was told to go print these out, so she sent it back to her pedophile ex-husband's laptop, who was found in an investigation to have classified emails on that laptop. This is all Hillary Clinton's decision that put that decision in James Comey's lap. Now, if we found out that if it was President-elect Hillary Clinton, and it's December 20th, and all of a sudden this story emerges, we walk into work, and we go, did you realize that they found confidential classified emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop in October, and they didn't tell us? He is right. There would have been a controversy, but this is Hillary Clinton's to blame.
And you know what's interesting? Last night, George Stephanopoulos did play clips of Hillary Clinton saying she did not send classified information. So he played clips of her lying.
He let her off the hook.
Yet James Comey is talking about how this president is not morally fit. To me, it felt like he was trying to say, my wife has told me don't be the, what was the phrase that she used when he was talking about Abu Ghraib? My wife told me, basically, he felt like he was so morally above everyone else. I mean, the title of his book is A Higher Loyalty.
Absolutely. So we just heard a moment ago Mr. Comey talking about, look, you can't be political in this job. And yet Chris Christie, who worked for James Comey as a U.S. attorney, says, look, it's all about politics. Watch.
When I worked for Jim, if I had said to him 11 days before an election that I was going to release information that could potentially affect the election, and one of the things that influenced me was polling, he would have fired me. He would have fired me on the spot. And it is really disconcerting to me as a guy who worked with him and for him and have defended him on this air and other places over the years to see this interview and what he was saying. It is exactly what they teach you not to do. What we find out from your interview is that he did. That Jim Comey did care about politics. And it is so depressing to me as somebody who spent 7 years in the Justice Department trying to make sure that the Justice Department worked the right way. What he's proving in that interview is that the president may have in fact been right to have fired him.
And by the way, one of the big losses the president's have is not having him on his transition team and not being in the White House. But Governor Christie makes a great point, but I'll add to this. He mentioned the polls. But if James Comey could count on the Justice Department to be fair, he won't go out and say Loretta Lynch was in the tank for Hillary Clinton and President Obama wanted it that way. But he's saying I had to be the Justice Department because I did not trust Loretta Lynch to do what should have been done.
Because he was quoting the polls because he said the conventional wisdom was that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And I had to announce that there had been this secret investigation because if it was later revealed that it had gone on, she would be illegitimate. So in other words, he wanted to validate her presidency.
One last comment that we haven't mentioned. Something that really bothered me, a guy talking about how this president is not morally fit and how Hillary Clinton would have been the better candidate. me is he went after this president's appearance. He talked about it looked like he'd on the tanning bed.
All right, and we hit him because we hit Syria along with the UK and France because of their continued use of chemical weapons, which is an international violation since World War I. The question is, what kind of message did we send? We thought 59 Tomahawks a year ago would send a message to Syria. It didn't. They've had at least 9 other chemical attacks since. Was this enough to send a message to the Russians, the Iranians, and Syrians that there needs to be a solution here? I don't think so.
There is a story in the Wall Street Journal this morning that says that the President of the United States was presented with 3 different plans. One would take out just their chemical weapons capabilities. The second one would take out a lot of Syria's military capabilities. And the third one would knock out parts of the Russian operation over there. And at the suggestion at Mr. Mattis, who was worried about involving Russia anymore, he said, let's go for the most limited, most specific targeting, and that's exactly what they did. Meanwhile, later today, we're going to find out what sort of Russian sanctions the United States and the world community will level against the former Soviet Union. Here is our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley.
Russian sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday if he hasn't already, and they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use. And so I think everyone is going to feel it at this point. I think everyone knows that we sent a strong message, and our hope is that they listen to it.
She said they don't have good friends. The friends that they do have are causing them harm.
All right, we're going to talk to Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa about this in about 4 minutes. But in the meantime, we got some headlines with some sad news about Barbara Bush.
Absolutely. Let's get you guys caught up on this for sure. So let's begin with this Fox News alert. Well wishes pouring in from across the country for former First Lady Barbara Bush. The 92-year-old deciding not to seek further medical help after a series of hospitalizations for congestive heart failure and COPD. A spokesperson for the Bushes says she is, quote, surrounded by a family she adores and appreciates the many kind messages and especially the prayers she is receiving. Our thoughts go out to the family. Turning to extreme weather, one person is dead after a tornado rips through North Carolina. The funnel cloud caught on camera in Greensboro. The twister leaving a path of destruction, the city now under a state of emergency. Fierce winds and rain also knocking out power to thousands. Severe storms are now barreling east. Country music's biggest stars taking Sin City by storm for the 2018 Academy of Country Music Awards. The show honoring the 58 lives lost in the Las Vegas massacre. Jason Aldean, who was performing when the shooting started, paying tribute.
We thought about starting with a song, but it's a lot bigger than a single song. It's everything you'll hear tonight. The songs that bring us to our feet, make you want to pull someone close, or just live in the moment. Nothing can take that away from us.
And Carrie Underwood returning to the stage for the first time since falling and injuring her face. As for the big winners, Jason Aldean taking home Entertainer of the Year award, Chris Stapleton winning Album of the Year, and Miranda Lambert honored with Song of the Year for Tin Man. Guys.
And then Chris Stapleton went and had twins.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Good order.
That song.
What a day.
He won a lot of awards, but that one song about the beach, writing in the sand, I love that song, and he won an award for it. But yeah, he had twins last night, and I think it was his birthday, because Reba said happy birthday to him, too.
Wow.
I hope he played the lottery as well.
Seriously.
All right. All right,
Jillian, thanks.
Yep.
Meanwhile, straight ahead on this Monday morning, the Trump administration raising the pressure on Syria. But our next guest says Vladimir Putin should be held just as accountable for the chemical attacks. Could the new actions against Russia lead to war? Well, retired Lieutenant Colonel in the National Guard, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst is here. She's live next.
All right, plus, if you're going to sing the national anthem, it helps to know the words.
This is where life expresses itself as an endless flow of energy. Are you ready? Atlantis, Bahamas at heart.
Book by April 30th for summer savings at 1-800-ATLANTIS or AtlantisBahamas.com. when trying to...
Unless they're bad actors again, and then we're going to swoop in and do something else, it sounds like.
Well, I am glad that we took the actions that we did, finally. But very importantly, we were involved in these actions with the United Kingdom and with France. And so kudos to our president for actually involving allied nations in this strike.
Sure.
But going forward, we do have to have those discussions in Congress.
What about Putin? I mean, come on, he's pulling the strings over there. Something's got to happen to him and the people who are involved.
Well, and we've heard from Ambassador Haley, and we know that additional sanctions are going to come down, but those are part of those discussions that we need to have in Congress. Very difficult situation having Russia and Iran involved in that region as well.
Well, one of the conversations that a lot of people are having is what we've heard from the president. He's made it clear, you know, it was about a week before the chemical attack where the president said, you know, I'd like to get out of there as soon as I can. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was on one of the morning shows yesterday, and she said the president stands by that. It would be nice to get out as soon as we can.
I think it would be great to get out as soon as we can. However, we do need regional stability, and I know that's a difficult issue, but we are still combating ISIS in that region. So we do have troops that are involved in Syria. That's their primary focus. So what we see with Bashar al-Assad is really kind of a secondary issue for us right now, but it is one that we need to discuss again as Congress. We need to update our authorization for the use of military force. Many of us believe that. The president has the authority to do what he did.
Sure.
I'm glad that he did it, but anything additional to that, we need to address it as Congress.
When it comes to the size and scope of the strike on Friday night, it sounds like the president was presented with 3 plans, and Secretary Mattis said, okay, the big one is way too big for this, so let's go with the smaller of the 3. It sounds like the president wanted something bigger. Was something bigger called for, or was this just about right?
Well, I think right now this was about right because we do have Iran and Russia involved as well. And that's where I think if the president wants to do more, again, we need to come back as Congress and have those very hard discussions. Those are 2 countries that obviously make things very difficult for us.
All right. Senator Ernst, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
from
you, Steve.
Iowa.
Absolutely.
The state of my birth.
Love
Thank
it.
you very
Best
much.
state in the union.
I love it
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Meanwhile, while much of the focus has been on James Comey, a scathing report just gave us insight about the firing of his former deputy, Andy McCabe, in a lot of trouble. Dan Bongino saw this coming, and he says, just you wait. He's got news coming up next.
Why is Old Dominion #1 in customer satisfaction? Maybe it's OD's over 99% on-time rate, or our decades of supply chain experience that support the dynamic digital marketplace, or because when we promise something, we keep our promise. The reason OD is #1
There's a distinction between a friend of yours and a friend of ours. I felt this effort to make us all, and maybe this wasn't their intention, but it's the way it felt to me, to make us all Amica Nostra. We're all part of the messaging. We're all part of the effort. The boss is at the head of the table, and we're going to figure out together how to do this.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange. And I don't do it lightly.
Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and host of the Dan Bongino Show, the podcast that's so successful, and he joins us now to react to all of this. What'd you think about the mafia boss connection?
You know, Ainsley, for a guy who's 6'8", Jim Comey could not have looked any smaller last night. What a petty, small man. A mob boss. When I was a Secret Service agent, Ainsley, we used to go in the boss's office all the time, and he would say, you know, we're in this together, it's a team, you know, inferring that there should be some loyalty to the Secret Service and the cause. That Jim Comey went out there and used expressions used every day in private and public practice across America, and to use it to infer that the president is a mob boss, to compare him to killers, people involved in racketeering. I mean, what a disgusting thing to say. Jim Comey should really slither away. He's an embarrassment to the FBI.
Well, one of the things, Dan, that, you know, is understood at the FBI is you never talk about an ongoing open investigation. And yet there he was on TV last night talking about all these open investigations. I mean, doesn't that fly in the face of everything that he says he stands for?
Steve, yes, he can't seem to get his story straight about what he wants to do. What he does is he selectively keeps certain things quiet when he can use them to leverage them against the president. It is clear as day he can't stand Donald Trump, that this is personal. Steve, there was one thing, too, about this interview yesterday that jumped out at me, too. He said at one point, after every conversation, did you notice they kept playing that B-roll? Oh, I go home and I typed on the computer and they showed the blanked out computer.
Right.
What, really? He reminded me of a kid who like rats on his brother because he got gum in his hair or something like that. He didn't do this for Barack Obama. I mean, how pathetic. You took notes on every meeting with the president?
He was also so-called showboating during the Bush administration. He was very put down to President Bush. He said President Obama used his sense of humor to build people up, and he would always point it at himself because he was so confident and humble, where George Bush would use it to dig at other people, which showed an insecurity. I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's Dr. Drew, and he was a former FBI director. Meanwhile, let's talk about the other news that got smothered, and that is the IG report that had Andy McCabe confirmed to lie 4 separate times during this investigation. Luca, go between the lines on this.
Well, there was a huge bombshell in that report, by the way, and a hat tip to Christian Adams for pointing me to it over the weekend, where at one point a Department of Justice attorney calls McCabe and starts kind of putting the squeeze on him to make this Clinton thing like go their way. I mean, how did that get lost in the weekend news? That is a mega story in and of itself. But story number 2, and by the way, if you donated to Andy McCabe's legal fund, put a hold on that credit card charge right now, because get your money back. At one point, apparently, he authorizes a leak and then calls 2 senior FBI managers to ream them out for the leak he caused.
Do you believe that?
What kind of a character-free person do you have to be? I scratched my head like, this has got to be a new low.
And who gave him
for Andy
permission to
McCabe.
do that leak? He says he got permission. Who gave him permission?
And then apparently he lied to Comey, too, which is fascinating. So, I mean, that story was full, and I encourage you to go look at it, of just really serious allegations.
Right. And Dan, this is just the first of the Inspector General reports. This one was just focusing on, the release was to explain why Andy McCabe got fired. We're still going to hopefully find out about FISA abuse and any other Department of Justice or FBI corruption, right?
Yeah, Andy McCabe's going to need that legal money that a lot of liberals gave to him to defend himself. I think the big bombshell in the IG report is going to be if those FBI 302s, the summaries of the interviews with the people in the case, if they were altered in any way, Steve, these guys are in a world of trouble.
You have suggested that they were at his suggestion.
Yeah, I got a good source. There may be a problem there. So
all right,
he's in a lot of trouble, those guys.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, still ahead. Friend of the show, actor and retired Marine drill instructor Arlie Urmi has passed away. We took a look back at his visits onto the Fox and Friends couch.
Always fun.
Plus, James Comey claiming President Trump may have obstructed justice. The judge is here to react to that live.
But first, here's Blake Shelton performing I Lived It at last night's awards in Vegas.
Unless you lived it, and man, I lived.
Pass the pudding, please.
When things get ugly, call the We Buy Ugly Houses people. We can give you an all-cash offer and can close quickly. Go to WeBuyUglyHouses.com or call 800-44-BUYER.
At BP, everyone on an offshore rig depends on one another. That's why entire teams train together in simulators to know exactly what to do before they have to do it. Because safety is never being satisfied and always working to be better.
Experience Lexus.
7 years, he was 74 years old. He had been on this program a number of times. After Full Metal Jacket, he became very popular with TV shows. In fact, he had a TV show. He was in a lot of movies. And for the most part, he was that guy that we saw right there.
Well, he was not that guy, but he was actually a Marine, and he played a Marine well.
He did. He was also the police officer in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I don't remember that.
The latest one. Scariest movie I've ever seen.
Meanwhile, here are some moments that Arlie Ermy had on our couch.
You don't call me sir, Brian.
Should I call you Sergeant?
You stepped on it again, didn't you?
Right. I want to promote another thing here, fellas, and you're not paying attention to me. I get to call the shots, and I kind of like it better that way.
Morning, Gunny.
Except for 5 guys. We got to shoot all the guns, blow stuff up.
So
we had
fun.
a great time. If we can't fly it, drive it, or shoot it, the hell we blow it.
There he was at that time. He was here to promote a video that he had out, and he always insisted that we call him Gunny. A great man.
Yeah.
All right, 26. We'll talk about it throughout the show. 26 minutes before the top of the hour. The judge is waiting in the wings to update us on what's going to be happening at 2 o'clock this afternoon and more. But meanwhile, Jillian, you have the other breaking news.
That's right. Good morning. Following some headlines, so let's go ahead and get you caught up. Starting with this: a major win in the war on terror. American and Afghan forces killed 22 Islamic State fighters in a special forces raid. The top U.S. general there saying fighters in northern Afghanistan are losing and on the run. The operation comes 6 days after an airstrike took out a top Islamic State commander and his bodyguard. Southwest Airlines passengers scared for their lives trying to land in a severe storm. Here's the path the plane was supposed to take from Fort Lauderdale to New Orleans. The track goes right through the storm. Here's what actually happened. Passengers say it was a nightmare.
It just felt like I was about to lift off. I felt like, okay, it's done. I'm about to see Jesus. I'm about to go see Mama, baby Jesus. I'm about to see Papa God, and then we're going to go see...
You actually thought that you were going to die?
Yes.
The plane making an emergency landing in Florida, later landing safely in New Orleans. Frightening moments, though. Rachel Platten blasted for forgetting the lyrics to the national anthem. The singer starting over twice before finally getting it right. Wow. Well, the crowd helping her out at a soccer game in Utah. Let's look at your headlines. I'm still surprised, guys, how many times we see this happening.
I know.
I know that you've got nerves and stuff probably, but come on.
Well, that's what happened. I was like, didn't she practice? Didn't she know? That's probably what it was. It was just she was nervous.
And plus, you get that reverb in your ear. We both of us came from a recording background, so you've never been a performer like we have. So that's. I'll go over that later in the break.
All right.
Dying to hear it, Brian.
Right now, we got Fox News senior judicial analyst. You know that laugh anywhere, Judge Napolitano. So, Judge, I'm a little confused. A couple of days ago, we had seen a passage out of James Comey's new book when asked about, and he was talking about possible obstruction of justice by the President of the United States. And I think he said something like it was unlikely. And then last night, he said it's possible in this soundbite. Watch.
Was President Trump obstructing justice?
Possibly. I mean, it's certainly some evidence of obstruction of justice.
At some point in your mind, as you're writing these notes, have you shifted to collecting evidence of a possible crime?
Well, yes, in a sense. I continued to believe that there was force to the FBI General Counsel's argument that we're going to have to look at the president. You're inevitably going to look at his conduct because he's the head of the campaign.
Do you think the Russians have something on Donald Trump?
I think it's possible. I don't know. These are more words I never thought I'd utter about a president of the United States, but it's possible.
Okay, so legally possible.
Means nothing, because think of it, anything is possible. If he had said probable, which means more likely than not, that would have tipped his hand that he saw something. And I think the most dangerous thing for the president that he said last night, much of what he said last night was just his opinion, and he's entitled to his opinion like anybody else. I didn't get any new facts from what he said.
He's selling a book.
Last night. He's selling a book. The best bookseller in the world is right next to me.
Thank you very much.
Love to be able to take the president on that. Him blasting your book, they'd sell $5 million instead of the $2.5 million.
But he is blasting. He's going to help him sell books like he did with
But as I started to say, the most dangerous thing was his comments about obstruction of justice. Why do I think that's dangerous? Because he talks to Mueller. and because he knows Bob Mueller's thinking on this. We don't care if Jim Comey thinks the president may have obstructed justice. But if he's sending a signal that Mueller and company think that, they think it on the basis of some evidence, and that's potentially
You think he is talking to Mueller now?
Sure. He's a witness for Mueller, so they interact with each other all the time.
But he said he thinks he's obstructing justice in a sense. What does that mean? Either you are or you aren't.
You know,
right?
you went to law school. I mean, these nuances mean a lot of things. Possible instead of probable. In a sense instead of yes. He wants to get the incendiary thing out there to sell the books, but he doesn't want to pin himself down to a set of facts for which there is not clear, strong evidence.
New York Times says the most important thing on the president's mind now that has him most concerned of what's going to be happening at 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's when Michael Cohen goes into the Southern District of New York courtroom in front of a judge. What's at stake?
Okay, the government's theory is, and I read the government's documents over the weekend, which are on the internet, anybody can read them. The government's theory is that Michael Cohen, though a licensed and practicing lawyer, for the most part didn't practice law. He was a fixer, he was a dirty trickster. And if he's not practicing law, if he's doing these other things, many of which are lawful, some of which are at the edge, there is no attorney-client privilege. And how are they going to prove that? The government's going to put Michael Cohen himself on the witness stand today, and they're going to grill him. And a federal judge, Judge Kimber Wood, longtime, well-respected federal judge, I don't even remember who appointed her. She was almost the attorney general under Bill Clinton. He might have appointed her. Will decide. You were practicing law, therefore these are privileged. You are not practicing law, therefore they're not privileged. If they are privileged, then a vetting team of 3 assistant U.S. attorneys who have nothing to do with the case that goes through each document. Privileged, we get to keep it. Privileged, we get to keep it. The privileged ones go back
why does
to
it
him.
matter? But why does it matter what's privileged? If he's a practicing attorney, if he says, hey, the president asked me for some details on Trump Tower, I'm being sued for here, or fire insurance, then he's a practicing attorney.
Yes, it matters because the attorney-client privilege is an ancient privilege, which if you came to me, not as your colleague, and said something to me, there's no privilege. Right. But if you came to me as a lawyer to represent you in a legal matter...
What's at stake for the president? What's the difference?
Because if it is privileged, then the government can't look at it and can't use it. If it's not privileged, no matter how damning it is to the president, if she finds that he was not practicing law, that he was a dirty trickster or a fixer, then the government gets to keep all of it, no matter what it is.
Even if he paid Stormy, certainly there's something he's done legally for the president. If the president's paying him.
Suppose the president's tax returns are in those files that were seized. What business is that?
What about those tapes? Supposedly there are tapes.
Maybe there are tapes between Michael Cohen saying to others, the president wants this, the president wants that, and that this and that would embarrass the president. If that stuff is not privileged, the feds get it and can do with it what they want.
And what are they looking for?
They say they are looking for evidence of criminal behavior on the part of Michael Cohen, bank fraud, wire fraud, and mail fraud.
All right.
They probably are looking for evidence about the president.
All right. Well, stay tuned.
Be wild at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Kimber Woods, judge, is the judge in it. All right, Judge, thank you. Meanwhile, straight ahead, runners getting set to race in the Boston Marathon as the city marks the 5th anniversary of the finish line bombings. So how is security being stepped up on Patriots Day? Well, the man who led the hunt for the bombers, Ed Davis, joins us live from the marathon. Next.
Plus, the New Yorker slamming Chick-fil-A for its Christian values, saying the restaurant's arrival in the Big Apple feels like a creepy infiltration.
What?
Why are they so out of touch?
But first, I asked Kenny Chesney to play this song for us. It's called Get Along, and it happened last night, too, at the ACM.
He listened to you.
Thank you, Kenny. How are you?
He's the only one who does.
Thank you.
We ain't perfect, but we try. Get along while we can. Always give love the upper hand. Paint a wall, learn to dance.
This is what getting your car serviced at Lincoln looks like. Complimentary pickup and delivery servicing now comes with every new Lincoln.
I won.
Giving you the luxury of time. That's the Lincoln way.
For every type of home project,
it's incredible what's happened over the last 5 years. There are almost triple the number of police, state police, federal agents here. The coordination, there's a command post up and running, everybody's talking to each other. One huge problem we had in the marathon was telephone communications. Our cell phones were completely dead. They've just rolled out a new system called FirstNet, and the core is up and running for the very first time today. Boston Fire Department's talking about it. It's a secure network with AT&T that makes police communications separate from commercial communications. So that's a huge deal. But the other thing is there's helicopters that have run this race, run the course, I should say, to take background radiation readings so that if there's a spike in radiation levels, they'll know about it immediately. I don't know if the choppers will be up today with the weather. It is New England.
Right. Commissioner, looking at what we're doing now, do you wish you did that then?
Oh, sure. I mean, hindsight is 20/20, and you know, we had 864 police officers just in Boston for that event. So it's not like we were understaffing it. But I think after what happened, it's clear that what they're doing now is working much better. It's not only a great testament to the men and women who are working this race, that there's so many of them out there in this inclement weather, but it's also, you know, when you combine the coordination, radios, the camera systems that are up and running. This is just a very well protected operation now, and hopefully they have a safe day.
Right, and I know a lot of people also associated with the attack, but also the pursuit of the Tsarnaev brothers, and a lot of the terror took place after, which we were covering a lot of it live in the morning, and you were too overwhelmed to be watching television. They actually did a movie on it too. Commissioner, we're so glad you're on our team. Thanks so much for bringing us to your insight 5 years ago today.
Thank you, Brian. Nice to talk to you.
All right, coming up straight ahead, the wind's pretty bad on that, even on the umbrella. Meanwhile, the Trump administration standing firm against the Assad regime. So what's our next step in Syria? We're going to ask South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. He wanted to see more. Plus, the New Yorker slamming Chick-fil-A for Christian values, saying the restaurant's arrival at the Big Apple feels like a creepy infiltration. Really? Really? Really?
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know how to cover almost anything, even close claws.
We took your shortcut. Was it bad?
I can't believe that worked. No, I got the keys.
And we covered it. Talk to Farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
We all share this world.
And all of that. This is what they do. It's the latte sipping crowd. They talk with other liberals, and all of a sudden it becomes this narrative out there. Christian traditionalism. You mean, hold on, Judeo-Christian values that define this country from its inception? Look, the article is so ridiculous on so many different fronts, but just take this. If this guy is going to write an article like this, well, how about, I don't know, maybe he should stop using money, because the last time I checked, In God We Trust is on our currency, and we can go on because he talks about all the symbols that Chick-fil-A has about God and Jesus. My goodness, it's all over a grilled chicken sandwich, and they're pretty good.
They are pretty good. So this writer goes on to say, because of the persuasive Christian traditionalism, its headquarters in Atlanta are adorned with Bible verses and a statue of Jesus washing a disciple's feet. What is wrong with that?
Well, I got to tell you, what's striking to me here is that, and look, I grew up in New York, okay? I grew up on the Upper West Side of New York. I grew up in a liberal Jewish household, so I get it. And what I mean by I get it is I understand that when you live in New York for a long time, it becomes the center of the universe. So, look, I understand that. The problem is, there's something called America out there. There's a heartland. There's Judeo-Christian principles. And, you know, when Donald Trump, it made me think of Donald Trump. You know, when he came along and he said, I want to bring Christmas back, and everybody laughed, haha, funny line. Look, what he was really talking about is political correctness. That, you know, it's time to say Christmas again, Merry Christmas, all of that. And that's the whole point. Liberals are so out of touch, and Donald Trump comes along, and this article exactly explains why liberals just don't get it.
You know, it's interesting. You're right about there being a whole country in between L.A. and New York, right? That a lot of liberals don't understand or don't get. What is interesting, though, is just like we're seeing in California, you're seeing cities that are speaking out against what their governor wants when it comes to sanctuary cities. Here in in New York, these Chick-fil-A's are doing very, very well. They're selling, according to this article, every 6 seconds they're selling a sandwich. And Mr. Cathy, who started this Diet a Billionaire, the company is doing exceptionally well. And people down south, I speak from experience, love the fact that it's closed on Sunday, and they want to support companies like this.
Well, and you know, that's because Judeo-Christian principles win out in the end. Donald Trump found that out. Last time I checked, our founding fathers found that out way back in the day. And look, this New Yorker article, here's the danger. The New Yorker article, like I said, they talk to these other liberals around town in New York and L.A. The problem is they're talking to 18% of the country. They're not talking to the heartland, and that's why there's such a disconnect. And that's why you see the media all the time going, wait, I don't understand how Donald Trump is still standing after all this time. Well, it's because you're writing articles like this that are just not compatible at all with mainstream heartland America.
Yeah, I think it's backfiring. Conservatives are tired of being pushed in the corner and not having a voice. So I think people are speaking out.
Trump tapped into that.
You're right. Thanks, David. Great to see you.
You bet, Ainsley.
All right, still ahead, James Comey making it a point to share this about his family.
My wife and girls marched in the Women's March. At least my 4 daughters, probably all 5 of my kids, wanted Hillary Clinton to be the first woman president.
But Comey says he never got political. Really? Plus, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, Anthony Scaramucci, Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley, and Alan Dershowitz. They're all here live coming up.
At the Joseph A. Bank Super Tuesday sale, save up to 70% off almost everything. All suits on sale starting at just $199. All dress shirts, including best-selling Traveler, $39. Plus, take an extra 40% off clearance and go wherever the moment takes you. The Super Tuesday sale, only at Joseph A. Bank.
I've been grilling for a long time now. I've got a certain way I like things. Right, more heat. Another thing I like is Consumer Cellular. I get unlimited talk and text for just $25 a month with no contract. Switching was easy. Now the bill is half what it used to be. And they have all kinds of phones.